G'day Syndal. This morning we're going to talk about labels. And until this week, I never really realised, but they are everywhere. They are all over most things that we're trying to buy, so that we know that what we're paying for is what we're getting. They're all over our food, medicine, clothes, whatever else we're trying to buy. They're there to help us know that we're going to get what we want to get. The problem is when the wrong label is put on something. For example, like if you're trying to post something and you put the wrong label on it, who knows where it's going to go? I mean, like probably, the wrong address you put on it, but it's not going to go where you want it to go. For food, it's really important, especially people who have food allergies. You want to know that what you're eating is not going to contain the thing that's going to give you an allergic reaction. So having the wrong label on a box of food or whatever is really quite problematic. Especially even like medicine, if there's the wrong label on the medicine, wrong dosage, wrong ingredients, then unfortunately you're probably going to further mess up your body, even though you're taking the medicine to try and fix what's already messed up in your body. So labels are very, very important, and when the wrong one is on something, you really, really pay for it, and you don't really end up getting what you thought you were getting. So we're going to explore that a little bit today as we look at our passage for this series. So for the next couple of weeks, we're going to continue on that passage of Isaiah 9, and today we'll just look at verse 6, which is the real main bit of this passage. So let me read it for you. Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6 says, "For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." So this word, Mighty God, the Hebrew word for that is El Gibor. So El meaning God, and Gibor meaning mighty. And so this translates a number of different characteristics that we know about God, things like him being heroic, strong, living, great, all those things that we would associate with God or with Yahweh, the King of the God of the Jews that we read about in the Bible. And so for Isaiah to put this label on this child that he's prophesying about in the future, onto Jesus, if you've read the Bible recently, or at least the New Testament, you will probably be okay with the fact that that makes sense. It makes sense that Jesus would get that title, Mighty God. There is a lot of evidence for that in the New Testament. I mean, you've got Jesus talking to a storm and telling it to shush, and it shushes. You've got him feeding thousands of people just using a small child's lunchbox. You've got him walking on water. You've got Jesus changing the very molecular state of water and turning it into something else. You've got Jesus healing people left, right, and center, people with busted eyes and shriveled arms and legs that don't work. He's pulling demons out of people. And at the end of his life, he dies, and then a couple of days later reverses that and comes back to life. And before all of that, he created everything and gave life to everything. So yeah, I think he gets that tick of the Mighty God label fits who Jesus is. And I think for most of you would agree with that. The thing about this label of Mighty God, this El Gibor word, is that back in biblical times, that was actually used quite a fair bit to describe a lot of other things other than God. So even really mighty men who did really heroic stuff in battle, people would call Mighty God. A lot of pagan gods, a lot of idols. Even the father of Baal, who was a bit of a rival god of Yahweh in the Old Testament, he was given the name Mighty God. And even massive objects in nature, people would say, that is Mighty God. And so people were slapping that label on a whole bunch of different things because that's who they were looking to. That's who they were looking to for their, some form of salvation. That's who they were looking to for their hope, their sense of security and comfort. And it made me think, man, if back then people were putting that label on a bunch of other things, Is there any chance that we would be doing that today? I mean, maybe accidentally, maybe we're not even aware of it, but is there a chance that we could be putting that name Mighty God, that label Mighty God, like onto our money? Would we be looking to our money to be our hero and our sense of security and a hope for the future? Is that possible? What about our stuff? Could we be putting that label of Mighty God on our stuff? Because we might have heaps of stuff and the biggest stuff and the newest stuff. Do we look to that to be our sense of self and to give us a sense of meaning? What about, sex, our partner, our job, our career? Could we be putting that label of Mighty God on those things? What about our social media presence, our online persona? Could we be looking to that to save us from those feelings of loneliness and sadness, for a sense of security? Is that what we're looking to be our hero? See, the problem is when you put the wrong label on the wrong thing, you really don't end up getting what you thought you were getting. And the thing about Jesus is that he was there long before us and any of this, and he'll be there long after all of this fades away. And if we would like the privilege of being a part of his future, then the Bible is really clear that there is only one way that can happen. In John 14:6, Jesus said that no one comes to the Father except through me. It is Jesus who is the way, the truth, and the life. No one else can come to the Father except through him. Because in order to be saved, not just from our sin, but from meaningless living and a life without purpose, you need something or someone who is outside of the system, someone who is outside of the problem. When I was younger, there used to be a number of TV and movie scenes where quicksand was involved. It seemed to be kind of semi-regularly that someone would accidentally tumble into quicksand and there'd been a lot of strife. But I don't really see that anymore. I feel like in the last 20 years, I've not seen a scene where someone accidentally stumbles into quicksand. And I'm sure you've seen some kind of scene where that happens. And the funny thing about quicksand, well, it's not really funny, it's actually more horrific. But the crazy thing about quicksand is that anything in the quicksand is useless, right? So if you accidentally were fall into quicksand, God forbid, and you wanted to get out, everything else in that quicksand with you is absolutely useless, all right? So take yourself, for example. You are useless. You cannot swim out. You cannot jump out. You cannot pull yourself out. You're just like a big sack of potatoes slowly sinking, right? Useless. If there was a rope in the quicksand with you, but it wasn't attached to anything outside, where are you going, right? It's useless. It's sinking with you. If there was a big stick or even another person in the quicksand with you, they can't help you, right? You're all sinking together. Nothing can help you that is inside the quicksand. The only chance you have to get out of that quicksand is if something or someone is outside of that, on some form of solid ground, right? If there was a rope attached to a tree that is outside the quicksand, then yeah, you've got a chance. I mean, you'd have to have some upper body strength, so maybe half of you would be okay, but at least you've got a chance. It's attached to something outside the quicksand. If there was a person outside the quicksand, they could at least extend to you a stick or their hand or something, but they're outside. Then you've got a chance. And the problem with all these other things that we may be attaching that label of Mighty God to, they are in the quicksand with us. We could be grabbing for this, that, and the other, hoping that it'll bring us some sense of comfort, security, hope for the future, some form of salvation. But all those things exist within the quicksand with us. Jesus is the only one mighty enough to save us. He is the only one that exists outside of the problem to reach in and save us. And the crazy thing about Jesus, right? This word El, that means God, we hear that again in another name of God, Emmanuel. And if you've been around Christmas before or church, you will know that that name means God with us. And the crazy thing about Jesus is not only does he exist outside the problem, is he chose to come in to save us. Not stay out there and save us. He chose to come in. He jumped into the quicksand with us, pushed us out, and took our place so that we could be saved. Can your money do that? Can your job do that? Can your online presence do that for you? Not a chance. Jesus is the only one who deserves that label of mighty God, and we are kidding ourselves if we are slapping that label on anything else. Jesus is the only one mighty enough to save you from your sadness, from your loneliness, from your addictions, from your anger, from whatever problem you are stuck in. And he is the only one mighty enough to reverse that state of separation that exists between us and God. And that is incredible news, such good news for us. I mean, that's the beauty of Christmas. This is the point in history where Jesus jumped into the problem, substituted himself for us so that we could have a chance to know God. It is amazing news for us, but it is not about us. Donald Miller said it really, really well, and let me read it for you because it makes a lot of sense. He said, "If I have a hope, it's that God sat over the dark nothing and wrote you and me specifically into the story and put us in with the sunset and the rainstorm as though to say, enjoy your place in my story." This is Jesus' story. And if we want the privilege of being a part of it, then there's only one way that happens, and it is through the mighty God, Jesus Christ. So let's make sure that when we wake up tomorrow morning, that we are putting that label of mighty God only on Jesus. It would not be a wise move to be slapping that label on our money, our social media, our job, whatever else, you name it. Jesus is the only one who deserves that label of mighty God. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you. Thank you for what your story is. Thank you that it is an incredible story, a story of sacrifice, of humility, and I thank you that you wrote us into it. You made space for us to be a part of your story. Help us when we get caught up in following what other people are choosing, in what other people are slapping that label of mighty God onto. Help us to remember that you are the only one who deserves that label, and you are the one we should be looking to for our sense of security, a hope for a future, and for our salvation. Amen.